Since my glow shift gauges are really bad, you can check out my review on those in a previous video. I decided to change my fuel gauge to a speedhut gauge. I had the Raspberry Pi for everything else in my car, but I bought this speedhut gauge here and I'm testing it on the bench. I was going to show you how to test it really quick if you had a spare sending unit laying around like I do. So I've got the power and ground from each of these. So I've got the 2 powers from the dotted line box, and I have the power on the bottom of the inverter. I have all those put together, and I have both of these grounds put together. And I twisted them together and put them on this 9-volt battery we have here. And it's not 12 volt, but it does it good enough to work. And I have this extra sending unit laying around. And there's a 1 wire that grounds itself in here, and it's kind of like a pot inside. And when you move the arm, it changes the resistance. So I've got a ground wire going back, tying into these other grounds on here, and then I've got the signal, which is this yellow wire, fuel level signal, going back to the gauge. So basically, if you were to take this and wire it up and ground this to chassis in your car, depending on what you have here, if you have 0 ohms, let's say 0 ohms is empty, it would go all the way to 0, or go all the way to empty when you ground it. But so I've calibrated this to this sending unit, and as you can see, the float is all the way down as if the tank is empty. And if I move it up like this, the gauge starts moving up, and it should go all the way to full. And the good thing is it has a little delay, so if you have any kind of slosh in your tank, it doesn't just automatically go to whatever your fuel is sloshing at, so you don't have a oscillating gauge. And which is what the problem I was having with the glow shift gauge was. It was oscillating really bad, and it would really only read from a full tank to about a half a tank. And this one looks like it's going to read all the way. It's got a manual calibration mode, and it has a button here that you set that with. So I've set it per these instructions here, and looks like it's working pretty good so far. I don't know if I unhook the power to it, if it saves the settings or if it goes back to how it was from the factory or what. I would hope it would save it, because every time I kill power to this thing with the switch in the car, it would lose its settings. But figured some people might be interested in that, how this thing works. And I'll be installing it in the car tomorrow, along with some heater hoses, because it's getting about that time to be needing some heat in the car, and me trying to make the car a little more streetable. That is pretty much necessary. I can do without AC, but heat in the winter, it's hard to drive a car without heat. As you can see, the gauge is still climbing up to get to where it's supposed to be, and it'll get there eventually. This 30-year-old sending unit might be a little flaky. It moved a little bit there, so it might go up a little bit more now. But either way, it's closer than what I got now. And whenever I get it in the car, I'll probably have to calibrate it again, because there's going to be a little bit longer run of wire, a little bit more resistance. Probably not enough to worry about, but I'm going to leave it on that setting and see how close it gets first, because I think that'll be good enough. So I'm getting ready to pull my gauges out of here and get this new fuel gauge in. I worked today to get the heat working in here. I had to pull the dash out and fix, there's a heater valve under here that goes to the heater cord that they don't make anymore, and it was leaking really bad, so I just JB welded it because I didn't know what else to do. And I ran my heater lines in. Got some bulkhead fittings here on the firewall, you can see. And for the first time since the LS has been in here, this car has heat, which is awesome because it's starting to get cold, and I like to drive this thing a lot, and even when it's cold. But so my plan today is to get this, also get this gauge out, put a new fuel gauge in, and hopefully it'll work right. I showed you how to test it with the sending unit, the spare sending unit, so I'm gonna put it in just like that, and hopefully it'll work just like it was on the bench. And I mean, if it's a little bit off, it'll be okay. Got the gauge cluster out. That's the POS that's going bye-bye. But here's the back of all my stuff. Here. There's a Raspberry Pi, and so I'll be pulling this dude here out and getting rid of him to replace with this one. But I'll go ahead and get started on that. Got the wires connected. Signal sensor wire, ground, and hot, and waiting for my soldering iron to heat up here, and I will start soldering. I've already got the heat shrink tubing on here. Heat shrink it down and put it back in the car. Got the gauge in, cut the key on just to see if it'll work, and seems to be doing good. I'm pretty happy with it. Be nice to have one that actually works. I don't know if I can't tell if the light's actually working or not, but I guess we'll see. But that's awesome. I'm so glad to have a working fuel gauge. I've run out of gas one time because of this stupid other gauge that I had in here. It was glow shifts, but I'll keep you updated and let you know how I feel about these gauges. But Speedhut seems to be pretty good and looks like a quality product for the price. I think this gauge was around 80 bucks, something like that, and it's a nice piece for the money. But I'll keep you updated on it. But that's it for this video here. Take it easy.